Hello, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. I was just telling Mike that every time I do the show, I start with TikTok, wondering when I'm going to get cut off, as you say, Mike. But I think today I'm just going to forego it because what I want to talk about is verboten for TikTok, which is exactly why I think we need to see something happen in this particular topic. And
Right.
that topic remains the 2020 election steal. I think that President Trump has been in office now for 1 year, and I haven't seen enough happen in terms of getting to the bottom of that election. It's still, as long as this poison is straddling our system, we are going to have, I think, existential danger to our republic. We have to have a full and complete investigation that has to include a special prosecutor, a mobilization of media resources, including friendly journalists and public relations firms and everyone else, a full investigation by investigative reporters, an entire team, its entire phalanx of effort to get to the bottom of that election. And I just heard on Steve Bannon, Mike Benz, who's really a good guy and who's totally on board with this, say that he had had a meeting, a private meeting with Pam Bondi, Attorney General, and Kash Patel, the Director of FBI, and Dan Bongino, Assistant Director, and some other people, and that we are going to get justice. He says that they're working on it. They just want to make sure that everything is absolutely in place. You know, every T is crossed, every I is dotted before they launch whatever it is that he says they're going to launch, but he says we'll like it and we'll get justice. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I don't know if I totally believe that. I want to see Pam Bondi replaced by Sidney Powell. I want to see the Kraken released. I still, 5 years later, we have not seen the release of the Kraken.
Well, if I could say this, I agree with you 100%, but there are practical issues here. And look no further than your good friend Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who, after all this Sturm und Drang, is going to be released by some commie judge. All right. So the thing, and I'm probably more frustrated than you, but the thing that's going on is you're talking about bureaucracies that are so large and so awful and so corrupt that unless, you have President Trump, so to speak, grow the corn, make the whiskey, serve the drink. I mean, what you're facing is that it's just a horrible bureaucratic nightmare.
Well, that's right. I mean, releasing Garcia, that's aggravating. It's aggravating that Comey and Letitia, big Letitia are skating. Those things are aggravating, but they are small pinpricks compared to
Well, yeah, but Chuck, what I'm saying is that everything that you may want to do, there's roadblocks built into a horrible system.
Well, it's because they're doing these things like kind of picking like with a little needle on the edges. We're going to get, I mean, nobody cares about Garcia or even Comey. I mean, you and I care. We want to see him hanging in prison by his toenails. But the point is that there has to be, they have to go to the very core of this rot. They can't just do these little cases that make everybody feel good. So they put Comey in prison. Big deal. They're not getting to the actual corruption.
Well, right, but this is my point. There are too many moving parts. Okay,
and that's how they stole the election.
I understand. Okay, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that Pam Bondi is fully on board. Okay, so she writes a memo saying, "Go do so and so," and maybe someone decides, "Gee, I'm not going to really do that right now," and it gets delayed. And then, I mean, this is the old cliche.
I understand that, but the point is there has to be something that uses every resource we have. Whatever happened to appointing a special prosecutor? They should appoint Rudolph Giuliani as as a special prosecutor to start taking testimony. They should finance it. Elon Musk might kick in some of the money for this. We have to get this has to be an all hands on deck effort, or it's not going to happen. I get the fact that the bureaucracy is going to sabotage it, just like they've always done, just like they did in the first Trump term when they came up with those phony impeachments and the Mueller group and the brown shirts putting people in prison, and just like they did under Biden with the lawfare and the which is much worse than people know in terms of like people being harassed at levels.
It's absolutely horrible, but understand how insidious this is. Okay, they come up with this revelation of all this Somali-based corruption in Minnesota. Okay, but let's use our old friend inductive reasoning for a moment here. Who the hell decided it was a great idea to bring in these unassimilable individuals from at best, corrupt as hell country, implant them in Minnesota so 3/4 of them can go on welfare, taking specific advantage of the so-called Minnesota nice.
I'll tell you who decided it. The corrupt, illegitimate people, shadowy people who were running the show for the Biden corpse. That's who decided it. I don't think Biden.
It was even before that. I mean,
not really. I think it really was launched under Biden, who opened the borders with the communist Mayorkas, who, by the way,
that's when it went into high gear.
He's from Cuba, by the way, and he's probably, I mean, look, the communists operate like this. They come in, they get higher positions, and then they subvert a country. What else? What is a better example than Mayorkas? And all of these people who basically ran the show. This is why, besides the fact that it's important that we clean up our elections and find out how this happened, we had an illegitimate regime for 4 years that was so corrupt and so unaccountable.
No argument.
But this is why we have to get to the bottom of this, because they're the ones who put Somalis in Minnesota and Maine. And by the way, this isn't just Minnesota. Maine is having a scandal like this also, and they have a corrupt, rotten left-wing governor who's also in bed with these Somali criminals who are funneling money to Al-Shabaab and who are taking money away from poor people who are trying to get a place at the table.
Who are the people? I've got to ask this. In the state of Maine, who votes for these left-wing traitors?
Probably corrupt machines and electronic clicks on a mouse is who votes for them. The corruption and the stealing. Colorado is another example. They're torturing Tina Peters in prison, a 75-year-old woman who never did a thing in her life, who's a Gold Star mother, and she's being put in a cell, isolated in a cell where it's freezing, and she's not in good health. They want to kill her, and they probably will. And the point is that this is who runs Colorado, because she simply, as a clerk, noticed irregularities on election eve of 2020. And after being ordered to destroy all the documents, which is really interesting, she decided to save a few of them and take some pictures and then alert the media. For her opinion, on top of that, the judge who sentenced her also said, "You're involved in a conspiracy to question the government. Weren't you on the Steve Bannon show? And aren't you talking to right-wing people?" In other words, she's being punished because of her opinions. And Colorado is getting away with this. Their governor is actually being touted as a presidential candidate.
Would you agree, though, that we're not going to get anywhere until we face the fact of how corrupt and miserable the system is?
Yes, I do agree with that. But
you and I are a minority.
Yeah, but that's why we need to have some kind of a national coordinated effort I mean, I think that, and these people are very dangerous. Look what happened to Charlie Kirk. They'll go out and they'll shoot you. We have to somehow stop this mamby-pamby, oh, we're going to put, we're going to have a judgment coming. Yeah, bullcrap. They're probably going to get some schmuck and put him in prison. No, this is not how we have to do it. There has to be a fully coordinated national effort that involves, the president, loyal members of Congress, the few that are in there, probably not many, right? I mean, the people in the media who are on board with this, again, probably not many, but maybe some multimillionaires and billionaires like Musk or someone who might come in. And the president has to meet with these people in the White House and coordinate this thing and do it now. It has to be done today. They can't wait any longer. I mean, and if Pam Bondi doesn't want to play ball, she should go. Give her
Well,
like
I would agree, but the thing that's working against us, right? You remember very well the 1964 book called "None Dare Call It Treason."
I do read that book.
What's changed?
Nothing has changed. It's the same thing. But the point is that now they've gotten so brazen that it was virtually exposed on the election of 2020. The whole country saw it happen with their own eyes that night. They watched it on television. You couldn't. I mean, it was just done right out.
You could see it in real time. You could see it in real time.
You could, and everybody did. And then, of course, they started. A week and a half later, the media coordinated and simply declared Biden the winner. He's like in a basement somewhere. And then they finished it off with apparently Pelosi masterminded the January 6th protest situation as a way and I think they expected to finish the whole thing off. They impeached Trump again. He was already out of office and they impeached him anyway. And, to show how utterly confident they were that they had destroyed this movement. They had destroyed Trump and the MAGA movement. They had covered everything. I mean, but then Trump came back, believe it or not, unbelievably, after having been shot at, after having been attempts to put him in prison for life, 97, indictments, phony laws created, accusations made from 30 years ago, whatever they could come up with, raiding his wife's underwear drawer, harassing his family members. I mean, the kind of harassment that this family. Read Eric Trump's book. He really goes into this, and he does it well. And this isn't just Trump. I mean, it happened to other lesser powers. I mean, even to this day, lawyers cannot work for Trump because they know that the leftist National Bar Association will make sure they never work for a law firm again. No, they'll be banned. They had licenses pulled. I mean, they like to talk about Hitler and Nazism. I mean, this is the closest thing this country had ever seen.
Well, the first step, which you and I, of course, have gone past, is the realization of how bad this situation is.
Right.
The trouble is, and I'm not sure how you're going to face this. Okay, the evildoers never get punished. Never, never, never. The only thing that's going to happen to Tony Fauci is he's going to get older and die. And then maybe 50 years from now, there'll be an article saying, boy, what a piece of crap he was. All right.
Yeah, but we have to stop thinking about punishing people. I mean, because obviously the election, once that's done, then you could go after the whole.
Well, if people aren't going to get punished, they have no incentive to stop them from doing wrong.
The point is,
you have your old friend Rachel, CDC, still being interviewed. Isn't this terrible with the vaccine? It's like they have no shame.
That's because we've left them in place. They're still there. And I mean, whether they're actually punished, I don't really care. I just want them out of power. I want them to be sent off to the Aleutian Islands or something where they're not going to be of any.
Well, I think the trouble is that they're never, in a sense, out of power. They're always in the media. There's no way to erase these individuals. And just by the fact that Rachel Walensky still gets on TV gives her some credibility.
Complete disgrace. But that has to be countered with a national effort to counter that, to expose that every time it happens.
Well, the national effort requires people stepping up, not being afraid.
Well, it has to be done. You need leadership for that, though, because people are afraid. They could lose their job. They could lose their life. You know, it is, and also there is this sort of, you know, what in psychology, in sociology they call collective effervescence. You know, you keep hearing a particular narrative, and you almost subsume it. You become. I mean, I'm guilty. We all have this. I keep finding that I've been bugged in a certain way about a certain thinking, and like, wait a minute, how could I have not said something about this? Why did I let that pass? And because it's like, it's hypnotic. These people understand manipulation of the mind. They've studied it. They've been studying it for centuries. It goes back. It's before Freud. It's like how to manipulate people's emotions, how to create mass, and it's like mass information. And, you know, it operates on certain principles. And one of the big ones is social acceptance. Nobody wants to be shunned. I can speak to this. I know what that's like. And it is more painful than any like physical attack, really. To be shunned, to be, you know, and they're suggesting now that family members shun other family members for supporting Trump. Don't, you know, I mean, talk about evil. I mean, you should never do that. Even if you hate the other person's position, they're still your family. You should have some basic, you know, cohesion. You know, they want to like rip everything apart. And it's very hypnotic because if you don't go along, if you don't play ball with that, you don't get all of the good things in life that you want. Acceptance, the good girlfriend, the parties, all that stuff. And it's very difficult and painful to stand up against that, which is why there has to be this effort. There has to be an office put in place to go after this. I don't think Congress has, none of these people have the will to do it on their own. But if there is a significant enough pressure applied by a coordinated organization, they can make inroads and start to break this hologram and get the Kraken released. It has to be done, and it has to be done now.
Well, there was a guy that tried promoting this sort of dialogue, and he got shot for it.
That's right.
And perhaps even worse than Charlie Kirk being assassinated, it also released a different Kraken of infighting within right-wing groups now.
Right, I know that. Yeah, and that's a waste. It's like I wonder if that's something that, I don't know. You know, the people are being manipulated by agents provocateurs, as the French say.
Well, right? I mean, the one that comes to mind, of course, is Candace Owens, who decided to change her stripes. Everyone seems to forget that Candace Owens was this liberal black woman until she found she'd get more clicks being a conservative black woman. Completely changes her stripes, has all these weird conspiracies.
I mean, also, you bring up the getting clicks. That is a big factor now. People are doing stuff to get clicks. It's people are obsessed with it. They're hooked on it. They want to be big on YouTube. There's a financial benefit. I mean, I understand she's raking in a lot of money. You know, you get sponsors, you get like, you're pushing, you know, vitamins and, you know what I mean, and supplements. I mean, I probably should pay more attention to that. I never have really had the energy for it. But people are doing this. I mean,
the only trouble with doing that is it destroys who you are. Before clicks as such existed, the best example of someone that ruined himself was Samuel Francis. Someone told him that he should really, you know, become more of a white nationalist in his writings because, you know, the people that followed that were interested in it. So he got more and more toward that direction, then started getting fired from all these institutions. And it's
And he backed down, right?
so.
That's also
Um,
here in Boston, Rabbi Sam Dresner. He started to look into, some of the leftist infiltration of Judaism, and he passed away, unfortunately, but he was being ostracized. I mean, when he died, the New York Times wouldn't even mention his name. They had several rabbis stepped up, and they actually had to pay money to get an obituary
yeah.
for him. I mean, it was he had been basically erased. And that's what's happening. I mean, look, that's what's going to happen to me and you probably. I mean, it's fine. It's sort of like this. I think of this Twilight Zone episode. I don't know. I forget the name of it, but it was one of the most frightening ones ever, where you have these three astronauts. Do you know what I'm talking about? And,
Yeah. And then gradually they each disappear, and
yeah,
everybody's mind is changed. That those guys never existed.
never existed. And one of them comes to realize his friend is they're sitting at a bar, and the guy drops a drink, and he says, "I don't feel good. I'm going to have to make a call. I want to call my wife." And he staggers into the telephone booth, and then he disappears.
Right.
And then the guy goes and he calls his wife, and she's like, "Who are you? You don't even, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know this person." And he looks at the floor and he sees where the drink fell, and it was gone. And every single thing about him had vanished. Erased from the world. It was like he never existed. And it's so frightening that then he's like running around. What happened to me? He's like, and finally at the end of the episode, the third guy is in the hospital. He runs into the hospital to see him, and he goes, "Look," I mean, he shows him the picture of the newspaper article of them landing, and you only see two of them.
Yeah.
And he says, "What happened to Joe? Don't you remember Joe?" And the guy's looking, "No, I don't know who you're talking about." And he's screaming, and he's like so upset. And then he finally says, "Oh, I don't feel good. Oh my God." And then he runs out of the room. And then Joe suddenly is like, "Oh my God, what's happened here?" And then he looks at the paper, and he sees only himself on the front page. And he's like, "Ah," and then he disappears. And they show that these people had never even existed.
Because the final newspaper story is no astronauts survive on the.
Oh no, the final news story was there never had been even a flight.
Oh,
it had never happened. It was like literally no longer existed, and these people had never been born. They had never. Everything that they ever did disappears. The people they knew had no understanding of them and that they existed. It was a complete and total
loss of identity. Yeah.
It's horrifying. I wish I could remember the name of it. One of those powerful. I mean, there's some great episodes of that show.
Well, one thing that's going to get people to speak out, I hope, and there was your friend Andrew Torba wrote a pretty big article.
Yeah, from Gab
talking about that. Being called a racist or homophobe or whatnot isn't scaring people anymore. Especially Gen Z doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
And so the idea that maybe you're not going to be able to be shunned quite as easily.
People are sick of it. But this cult of, like, for lack of a better word, for Trump haters or Trump deranged, they are still, I think that they're losing members, but they still hold the positions of power. They still only talk to each other. They still, I had this woman that was a passenger of mine who the subject came up, and she asked me if I was a supporter of Trump. And I told her, "Oh, yes, absolutely." And she absolutely went ape crap. I mean, in my car, asking me, "What do you think of this?" I mean, I'm like, well, I just would remind you that, we're around. I mean, there were a lot of people who do support Trump, and they're not stupid people. I mean, it's she was like in shock, and she was like peppering me with, inane questions. What do I think of the Epstein files? What do I think of the new wing of the White House? And I answered them all very politely. But her derangement and her rage was something that I kept trying to change the subject,
Well, I hate to say this, and you might disagree, but there's a disproportionate number of white women that fall into that category.
No, I don't disagree. White, suburban, well-educated, upper-class women. That's the core. And probably. I mean, I'm glad I'm not on YouTube when I say this. Many of them have had abortions.
Well, no, I was going to mention that. Here's the thing. I think the problem with this cohort that you're describing is that they bought into feminism and they realized too late that, well, this wasn't really right. Somehow they were able to convince women that it was good to kill your own offspring.
Right. And to put off marriage. And I remember like Gloria Steinem was like constantly on the cover of Ms. Magazine, men are evil. And it's like the need to have a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, she famously wrote. And what happens when you give birth to the enemy and they show a baby boy, and just this anti-man thing. Then all of a sudden, there she is, I think maybe in her early 40s, and she's getting married with a nice white dress, and she's going totally feminine. And women flipped out. They're like, what the hell? You told me not to do this. I wasted all these years, and here you are. And her answer was, well, this works for me. It's sort of like, kind of like in their face. But there was just this, women did not, they believed in this, and they put off their lives and their futures.
Well, it affected women disproportionately, I think, because women are supposedly more collaborative, and they don't rebel quite as much as men. But, saying that, this whole 60s ethos fooled a lot of people. A lot of people. I remember when Timothy Leary was on a talk show during that era. Mm-hmm. And some kid in the audience says, look, I tuned in and dropped out. Now I'm on the street. I have no money. I listen to you, and confronts the guy. And of course, Leary had nothing to say. Leary was paid for by the CIA.
The CIA, we now know that, yeah.
And
him and Dr. Jolyon West, they were handing out LSD in Los Angeles like it was candy. I mean, they were just literally, experimenting. They put it in the water in San Francisco. I mean, just these are social engineering experiments by the CIA.
The reason that worked as well as it did is, what's the first thing you learn in public school? How to take orders.
Right.
So, some people rebel, but most don't. Most go along with the program. Most got vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera.
They did.
You have a busy life. You don't have time to think about things as much maybe as you should. So, you got a lot of angry women that bought into this crap, and now they see that their entire life was wrong. You can't go back.
You have a lot of emasculated men who kind of, I don't know, they're like potted plants. They don't say anything. They don't want to disturb anybody. And if they speak up about anything, the women pile on like there's no tomorrow. So they're henpecked. I mean, it's they're quiet. They're just sort of like, right? I mean, they've been emasculated. It's it's whatever happened to like a reasonably masculine fatherhood orientation.
Well, that's toxic masculinity. And the thing is, there's always been ridiculous ideas out there, but you don't have to believe them. I mean, that's somehow the difference when media became so pervasive.
And I mean, in my little experience even now at ASU, doing sociology and history classes, it's all left-wing propaganda. Just about one little thing snuck in my latest class. Actually, a very good talk by this African woman from Zimbabwe. I've interviewed some people from Zimbabwe. They're very red-pilled, especially after they went through the communist regime of Robert Mugabe.
Oh, yeah.
But she represented the African Union in the United States. After she gave these interviews, she was fired from that. But she said, look, first of all, I want to thank President Trump for cutting all the money from USAID, because that money was being used for color revolutions in Africa. It was being used to pay people to overthrow governments that were too uppity. It was being used to foment, communist movements and violence, and she got in trouble for that. But that was somehow, I don't know how it happened. Maybe the professor was asleep at the switch or something. But he put that video in. It was the only time I actually had a video that was like, oh, how did this get here? But other than that, it's all left-wing, communistic garbage. I mean, moving toward the ideal of collectivism and, hate. The anti-Trump stuff is open, and young people are imbibing it. I think it has a particularly bad effect on young men more than women in a way, in that they're because they're being replaced by women in the workplace. They're being replaced. They don't have any. They sit around, as we talked about, in their basement looking at porn. I mean, they don't have any. They're staying at home. People aren't leaving their houses. All they have is like a good car. Whoopie-doo. They don't have. There's no spiritual direction. There's no everything. It's an influence that's very materialist oriented. There's no God. There's no great sense of task. I mean, this is something that the left-wing establishment has been working on for decades.
Well, you know that's true, and ad nauseum, I had mentioned the early '60s religious prayer out of schools,
yes,
decisions and so on.
That was a major turning point.
It was big, yeah. But I mean, to get people to the next step, which is to realize there has been a concerted effort to make all this happen. All right. There's no accident.
Oh, no. Sam Blumenfeld wrote about this intensively about John Dewey, the so-called father of progressive education, and how much he was like playing footsie with both the Prussian system, which was very socialistic. I mean, Prussia was the first kind of socialist state,
right,
which had a top-down welfare system, top-down education system, top-down health system. Everything was rationed. Everything had to do with whether you were, it was like a hyper nationalism that emanated from the philosophy of Hegel, who I actually don't think he necessarily meant that to be, but his philosophy was embraced in a way that was intense, and certainly it's also an influence on Marx. But Dewey was all on board with that. He went there, he studied it. He studied the polytechnic system in the Soviet Union. He sat at the foot of Stalin, and he is considered the sort of the father of modern education. Sam had a hypothesis, which I think is brilliant, in that Dewey talked about fusion and about creating a collectivist mind that would be devoid of individual identity. And in that sense, he went into a collusion relationship with John D. Rockefeller, who you could say, at least conventionally, represented the right, even though I don't view, they're all on the left, in my opinion. But he had big factories that needed people to punch a time clock. And back then, this was at the height of industrial times, the 1920s and 30s, where you would have 3,000 people show up at a factory every day and punch a time clock. He wanted people who didn't do much thinking. He wanted people who were pliable and who were docile, who didn't question authority, who were able to go to a job and sit there for 8 hours and go home and not have any kind of he wanted to stamp out any opposition. And so he coined the phrase human resources as opposed to human beings. And he worked hand in glove with Dewey. They both had the same goal. They both wanted to have this new man, this kind of denuded, castrated person who would just sort of be lobotomized, basically, actually.
Well, and they succeeded.
They did. And that's why we're in a crisis today, because that's why the corruption and the rot is so out in the open. and we cannot mobilize enough people. It may
Well,
be too late.
it's out in the open. They get away with it because, again, as John Stormer said, although he didn't make up this quote, none dare call it treason. Now,
Yeah,
you could, whatever it's the idea of connecting the dots to realize that this has been a massive effort that's gone on for at least the last 60 years and longer, as you say, 100 years.
right.
So maybe it starts out with small victories first, okay? That it was very
Substance behind them. I mean, we had a big victory in the election of Trump.
yeah.
That was almost impossible. I mean, that was unthinkable. I don't think they ever expected Trump to come back, and he has come back, and he's taking them on, but he needs help. He has to, we have to, he's just a one man. I mean, he's like, he's no spring chicken either.
Well, they didn't expect it because they controlled what they thought were all the conventional resources, the
Right.
conventional media. All right. But what the luck of 2024 was that there's alternative media, which was being consumed by a lot of people. And the demographics of Lester Holt, let's say, the average age is 87. So this was not.
No, alternative media did save the day. I don't think they expected that.
Yeah.
They didn't expect the fact that, you'd have Rumble and BitChute and Gab and all the rest, and that people would continue. They may not have the audience that YouTube has, which is completely controlled, but they could reach enough of a megaphone that they could reach enough people. I mean, Trump was literally, after the second impeachment and after he was removed from office, he was completely banned from the media, Fox News included. Nobody would interview him ever. He was basically, it was like that Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
He's being taken off the page. And, and yet the alternative media, he was, I remember, you'd see even like his rallies, you'd have to go to these weird sites where you'd see a grainy image, but millions of people did. Tucker Carlson is an example of somebody fired from Fox News, has a bigger audience than all the major networks. And he's Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, he doesn't bother with any of them. He doesn't even bother with Twitter or nothing. And he has something like, 50 million downloads. I mean, it's huge. And he did it I think he had a little financial help, but he was able to put the thing together, and it's had a huge influence. So they didn't expect that. And they put him in prison, right? I mean, him and Peter Navarro. I mean, these people, as Bannon says, they play Smash Mouth. They're not messing around. That's what we're up against. But I mean, there has to be some kind of coordination, and it has to be national. It has to be multi-pronged. It has to have money, and it has to really be, very well presented. They need a little better public relations.
Yeah, I would agree. But here's the good news, that cracks are starting to appear in these institutions. This evening, or maybe it's already even happened, Steve Kirsch is interviewing Robert Redfield, who was a CDC director, who's coming out aggressively saying they got to pull those mRNA shots off the market. Now, that doesn't seem like a big revelation, except they're still on the market, all right, even though no one's taking them anymore.
Right.
Very small number of people. So there's little cracks starting to appear. But then there's going to be situations where we go backwards, where some left-wing communist judge releases Abrigo Garcia.
Right.
But it's going to take a while to break all this down. You just have to have more people that are willing to speak out, to not be afraid. And
I agree. And I mean, you have to, everyone in their own life, and myself included, sometimes you just have to stand up and speak out in different situations and realize that there are going to be some consequences. do what you can within your own realm, and that there are a lot of limitations. But I think that people would be encouraged if there was some kind of a national effort. People would come out of the woodwork. They would come out of hiding. People would admit that they know the election was stolen. I know that left wingers like here in Boston. I mean, I don't know why I mention him in particular. I've known him. I've met him a few times. That being Jim Browdy from NPR. He knows damn well the election was stolen, but he's glad. Well, first of all, if he ever said anything, he'd be fired. But he wants it stolen. He hates Trump, and he's glad it was. So he's willing to continue to perpetrate that lie.
Well, okay, in his case, why does he hate Trump?
Because he's an old left-wing guy. I mean, he knows that he hates Trump actually more legitimately than a lot of people who are not conscious. He's an open leftist who wants to have a more collectivized society. He believes in internationalism. He does not believe in God. He looks down on religion. He's, personally, I think he's not a collectivist. He probably has a lot of money, but, he believes in socialism. And he knows that Trump does pose a lethal threat against him and his ideology. He does. And so he hates Trump for that, for real reasons. And he's smart. But, so I get that. But the point is that most people who hate Trump don't know why. They've been brainwashed by the drip, drip, drip Chinese water torture that is delivered by the media every day. Ding, 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 a little. And they come up. I mean, even my wife admits, I don't want to get into this, but that, these stories put by Yamas and Lester Holt and all those people, they're just complete lies. It's utterly false. And then a day later, they admit it. Now, I thought maybe this would lessen once Trump was elected, but it hasn't. It's gotten worse. It's bigger now. I mean, they can't do the impeachments. Believe me, if the Democrats take back Congress, they will. But so they can't do some of those things. At least the Republicans in Congress are somewhat, they've got a few scruples left. But they're doing just about everything else. And they're continuing these.
Well, one of the problems is that these institutions were taken over. This was Gramsci's march through the institutions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not really going to be able to reform the media. It's not going to happen. It can't happen unless you burn it all down literally and start again. You go to journalism school, they're all left wing. Okay.
And they're taught,
they're all left wing.
And they're taught, they're no longer even pretending to do objective journalism. I mean, I think that Lester Holt himself let the cat out of the bag on that one when he accepted some kind of an award. And he said, the days of objective journalism are over. That's a quaint idea. We don't do that anymore. He's open about it. I mean, not that they always weren't anyway, but it's pretty. I mean, like the story about, hitting those drug boats off the coast of Venezuela. They're covering, it's a complete lie. They are obviously drug boats. You can see in the video the big bales of drugs on those boats, and these aren't some little dinghies either. Those drug cartels are, they're extreme. They have a huge money, the kind of money that you can't even imagine. They have tanks, they have helicopters, they have submarines. I mean, this goes back to Bill Clinton with Mina Air Base. I mean, we don't have to go that far back, but the point is that there's huge money involved and it's very corrupt, and they know it. And they're going to try to criticize Hegseth, right? It's like, it's just lies. I mean, this is BS. They're trying to stop this poison. This is a biological weapon, fentanyl, from coming into the country and killing people, including my sister-in-law's son recently, who died of fentanyl poisoning last Christmas, on Christmas Day. And it has ruined his mother's life. And he was a very nice guy.
Here's the thing. If you hate Trump enough, then that's all that matters. All right. You look at a boat, a little boat with $60,000 worth of engines on it, with a small crew, with limited space, going at a high speed. There is no legit application for that boat. Zero.
And you can see that these are, as I said, these are not little dinghies. These are very
Yeah.
sophisticated, expensive ocean faring boats. And, they've been doing this for years, and Trump is putting a legitimate stop to it. It's an invasion of the United States, just like he shut down the border. I mean, these are basics. This isn't, so they're going to come out in support of drug dealers, basically. And
Well,
I mean,
under the cover of Geneva Convention and all this, but it's all crap. I don't think it's really resonating with most people.
I don't think so either. And also, it not to mention the fact that Obama, probably rightfully, was known, it had a penchant for hitting people with drone strikes and killing them, including American citizens in Yemen, in Somalia. Look, I probably for good reason. I mean, Obama, you have to give credit where it's due. But, this is no different. I mean, this is actually more defensible because these aren't in Yemen. These people are in Florida. I mean, they're coming in, they're trying to smuggle drugs here off our own coast. But anyways, just, to kind of wrap it up. I mean, I just think that, my thinking, and we all should do some thinking about this.
Well, you want to see, and rightly so, a big trophy already. All right.
No, actually, I don't want a trophy. I want systematic. I mean, the problem is they're looking at the shiny object. Sure, it would be exciting to see Comey and Clapper and these criminals hanging in prison. Those are, as I say, shiny objects. I want to see the whole rotten edifice exposed and kicked into the gutter. I mean, and not necessarily put in prison. Let them all, move somewhere. Let them leave. Just get them out of power. They are in power now. They are still in control. And I mean, look, there's.
It's going to take time because they've polluted these institutions.
The Trump's only going to be in office for 3 more years.
No. I mean, so that's the depressing part of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Time is running out. There's no one that's going to be able to take Trump's place, as far as I can see. They're all, nobody's like him. He's an unusual figure. The kind of figure that comes along once every century or two. It's like Charlemagne. I don't know. It's like one of these, right? Like Jesus. Not that I'm comparing, but you know what I mean. I mean,
no, it's an extraordinary situation.
Extraordinary and then they end up getting crucified. But the point is that you have somebody coming along who really blows the lid off of the hologram. They release the Kraken. You have, right? I mean, there are people like that, and you need to kind of capture it and put it in a bottle or something, and propel it. And Charlie Kirk was that. He was amazing. You take a look at his videos. He was like truth telling on those campuses. I'm not surprised he was killed. I mean, he was turning people around, including hard left wing, really hardcore young people. I mean, who were like, hey, okay. I mean, this is, and so what happens? You're crucified. You're shot. I mean, it's why it's going to take. You have to have people in the bullpen warming up. You need to have people who are willing to go to bat after someone else gets struck out, and it's going to require a lot of people and a lot of money, and this time is short. That's really what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think a very positive first step is for more people, for the normies, to start realizing how corrupt the system is, to connect some of the dots. Okay.
Right. But they're not going to do it unless they feel they can do it without paying a social price.
Well, no, I mean, even in their own minds, okay,
right,
to come to the conclusion that organized public health is a freaking disaster.
Yeah, they're not going to realize it. They will realize it, but they're not going to let themselves realize it. I mean, it's a weird thing. It's like the stolen election. You subsume it. You kind of like put it out of your mind, because you can see, it's What
So
happens,
deep down, you know it's true, but you can't deal with it.
you can't deal with it, you can't think about it. And so, I mean, authoritarian societies will occasionally hold a couple of people up who are dissidents, and they'll publicly have them executed in the most humiliating way, and they'll torture them, like the auto da fe of Portugal, or the Soviet Union would do this. I mean, they all would do this. And it sends a message. Look, this is what the Charlie Kirk assassination was about. Why did they choose such a public place where they were filming? I mean, the Kennedy assassination. It sends a message that if you step out of line, this is you. Because if we can do it to them, think of what we can do to you. And it's the way terror works. Look, I mean, the Bible talks about this when they talk about Amalek, right? The reason why Amalek, I just got into this. Actually, yesterday I had on Michael Jones on my show, and we talked about this.
Oh, your buddy. Okay.
Yes, and he was quite friendly and nice. I think he was astonished that I actually contacted him and invited him because of our feud on Twitter. But he was actually quite reasonable. And he has this thing about Amalek, and that the Protestants are believing in Amalek because they take a literal interpretation of the Bible, and that Amalek was annihilated because of their race, and that this is what Judaism is about. Anyway, the point is that I corrected him, I think, well, by noting that the reason God targeted Amalek, and by the way, that God is the same God that you and I believe in, you being Catholic and me being a Jew. The Old Testament is canon, right? That's God saying it, not the people. But the reason why he commanded the Israelites to attack Amalek and destroy Amalek was because Amalek had violated logos, as Dr. Jones likes to say. They had violated the order of the universe when they attacked the Israelite caravan in Sinai from behind, not in the front. In other words, the back of the caravan is where women and children and the elderly and the infirm and the weakest members of society are. And it was not only was it an evil thing to do, but it was cowardly. It was the world's first terrorist act, because they wanted to create disorder and chaos and fear in that society as a way to bring it down. And the Lord God, King of the universe, commanded the Israelites to destroy them because they were unrepentant, and because if they were allowed to stand, they would infect the entire world. The same reason why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. The same reason why God had the flood and only left Noah and his family alive, and he promised never to go that far again. It was because that had to be done. And while the rabbis note that there was no such a group as Amalek anymore, that the Israelites failed to destroy them, and they dissipated into all the nations of the world, there is still the actions of Amalek. It's not a person. I mean, it is a person, but it's not a race. It's not a group. It is an action that is disruptive of freedom, disruptive of people's ability to function in a moral society, and that they have to be brought to justice. And, the death penalty is still in place for people who commit acts that were similar to what Amalek did. Unprovoked murder. When you murder someone, you are replacing God with yourself and deciding whether someone's going to live or die. And thus, the only way to atone for that sin is for you to be put to death. And when the state puts someone to death after they've been properly convicted, and there's a due process, and there's proof, and there's a high standard of proof, that state is not committing murder. It's carrying out a sentence to deal with the person who did commit murder. It's simply, you know what I mean? It's not a murder when someone is
right. But then, of course, you're touching on the other problem. All right. I think in many ways, a guy like Tony Fauci is worthy of being executed. However, everyone would disagree with me that they didn't see him actually put the shiv in somebody and kill them. No, instead, he killed tens of thousands with bad public health policy, first with AIDS and then with COVID. All right.
And he did it so consciously.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he actually thought he was doing something good. He maybe thought that he would take a chance and he was experimenting, but
Yeah.
he knew the risks and he hid them. The CDC, the people who hid all that data showing that COVID jabs will cause heart disease in young men, that's that's a form of genocide. I mean, that's
Oh,
evil.
there's no question about it. But see, you and I believe in these Old Testament values, but the average person doesn't. In that, what do you mean? How can you execute the people that? Well, wait a minute. How many people did they actually kill? Right?
That's right, and that's
Thousands,
that's
millions.
called justice, is what it is.
I
They
agree.
like to talk about social justice. Well, let's get to social justice. Those who commit acts that destroy lives and literally and consciously, um, they ought to be brought to justice. And if we don't do it, it's going to metastasize, and it's going
And
to,
it has. It
and
has. It just got
exactly.
worse.
And
I
that's
mean,
why God commanded that they
as I pointed out on many forums, they should have gotten rid of Fauci after AIDS.
which
And
he
they,
knew
they were,
he killed more gay men than the AIDS itself. That
well,
just
between denying the use of Bactrim and prescribing AZT, thousands were killed, and that's on his head.
and he
But
did the same thing with COVID by denying hydroxychloroquine and
I mean,
ivermectin,
yeah,
which are FDA approved drugs to deal with virus. I mean, it's maybe they wouldn't have always worked, but the fact that it would be denounced the way it was, and there was that phony article in the New England Journal of Medicine, and there's so much complicity in this, and it was all to help the drug companies get those vaccines, which I think there's a motivation that's both financial because people made billions of dollars on that, and also eugenic. I mean, for lack of a
yeah.
better word, let's cull the useless eaters like they do in communist
Well,
China.
but here's the problem. You could go into polite society, and you're not going to find one person out of 10 that agrees with what we're saying right now.
No, because it's so alien to them.
He's not a violent felon. He's not a serial killer that, I mean, if someone kills 3 people, they're a serial killer. If someone kills hundreds of thousands of people, they're a bureaucrat, I guess.
Well, I mean, isn't that what Hitler meant when he talked about the big lie? Which, by the way, he learned from the Soviets. That if you tell one lie, it's a crime, it's a problem. But if you tell the big lie, which involves hundreds of thousands of people, that's fine.
Right.
You can get away with it. So, I mean, look, the only way to break through is going to be some kind of an effort where there's coordinated people. RFK Jr. could be part of it, where every day there's a press release, there's a speech, and more people have to hear it. And there's an investigation. There are special prosecutors. There is all weapons. This is like the landing on the beaches of Normandy, right? It has to be coordinated from the sea, from the land, from the skies. There has to be a full-scale launch to get this done that cannot be denied. It just has to be done that way. We can't have these little piecemeal pinprick, interviews with Comey and that kind of thing. It's bigger than that. Who cares about Comey? We have to have, and put aside the Schadenfreude that we would all feel seeing him in prison. Great, but I mean, I'd like to see the Clintons in prison too. But the point is that I don't care if they go to prison or not. We have to expose this. It has to be done full scale, coordinated with all guns blazing. We have to have media involved, people who are supportive, journalists, authors, public relations people, marketers, ad agencies, for consultants, the big tech people like Musk, maybe. I mean, I don't know. He could write a check to cover everything probably, and it wouldn't even, think it would like be a blink of an eye. But I'm just saying it has to be done like that. It just does.
It has to be a big effort, and more and more people have to become aware of how bad it is. But again, with high prices and pressures that everybody has, um, they don't have the time to connect the dots to get mad enough.
Yeah, but we might get enough of them mad enough if there's this effort,
Yeah.
and we have people who do care, and there are enough of them out there, and a lot of them are good, important people.
Oh yeah.
They have to be brought together, and they have to do this. They have to do it, and they have to do it now. Anyway, Mike, what do you have coming up on the Substack?
Well, I'm still working, as we talked about last week, something on the cultural side. I was going to try to synthesize this whole thing about it, as you noticed, with it's either going to be Netflix or maybe Paramount.
I wanted to talk about that with you. We should do that next week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say this, that the reaction of the usual suspects is very interesting. That this wow, they have to keep in the normal structure of having the movie theater and blah blah, without realizing that the government in the 1950s started the destruction of the movie industry through antitrust. You may be old enough to remember when the studios also owned the theaters.
Right.
So they had to come out with good movies or the theaters would be empty. And that was broken up, and that was exactly coincided with how the beginning of the destruction of the movie industry. And then, COVID was the final straw. But the point is, people still want entertainment. They may not want to go to a movie palace at $20 each to get in. And the entertainment industry, has always had its head up its ass all the time. They were against sound, okay? When I was in the music industry, the huge frustration was they didn't know what business they were in. They actually thought, Chuck, that they were in the business of selling pieces of plastic to people. They didn't realize they were in the business of music distribution.
Right.
We had meetings early when MP3s were first invented to license some catalogs, to try to license downloads.
They just had no understanding of it.
No idea. And this is the same thing, I feel bad for the people that own the movie theaters. A friend of mine who actually died a few years ago was a big executive with AMC. He left AMC because he could see the writing on the wall then.
And they're going to take a big hit now, I think. I think a large number are going to be shut down with the merger.
Anyway, we can go into that in more detail next week.
Definitely.
But in the meantime, enjoy yourself.
As should you.
And we will do this again.
Onward and upward, as I like to say. God bless America. And I'll